All right, and good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome and introduce Dr. Robert Murphy, the Executive Director of the Havey Institute for Global Health and the John Philip Fair Professor of Infectious Diseases here at Northwestern Feinberg School of Medicine, who answers your COVID questions and addresses the latest in COVID news every Tuesday and Thursday right here on the Havey Institute for Global Health Facebook page. And today, Dr. Murphy will be answering your questions and addressing the latest COVID headlines through today, the 5th of April. And we invite you to continue to submit your questions to us should you have one via email at globalhealthinstitute@northwestern.edu. And leading the discussion is our student research assistant, Sophie Wiskowski. So Sophie, I now turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kristen. Hi, Dr. Murphy.
Good morning.
So now for some updated COVID statistics. In the United States, we're having a 7-day average of 27,523 positive cases per day, with a 6% decrease over the last 14 days. But yesterday in the United States, we saw 40,000 positive new cases. Our hospitalization rates and death rates are both decreasing. But what we are finding, unfortunately, is that in Illinois, our cases are increasing. We are seeing a 17% increase over the last 14 days. And yesterday in Illinois, we almost saw 3,000 positive new COVID cases. What can you tell us about this increase in Illinois that we are seeing with positive new COVID cases?
Well, it's not just Illinois. It's all over the place. It's all over the world for a variety of different reasons. In Europe, they're ticking up. Everybody has basically given up on the mitigations, the mask mandates, and even loosening up the vaccine requirements going into certain places and stuff. All that has kind of ended. And so this is the price we pay. And some of the models now are, although the overall cases are way down compared to the peak, excuse me, that probably the deaths also may tick up, unfortunately, because a lot of people are getting it that are very immune compromised, even though they're vaccinated, or those people that are unvaccinated, they're getting it. Like I got it 2 weeks ago, and I've many colleagues actually made it through the whole pandemic, and then now they're getting infected. There's a couple of reasons for that. It's mostly the behavior, like I said, has shifted. And BA2 is highly infectious. It's like 30 to 50% more infectious than Omicron. So it's pretty easy to spread. It's already now. What's the number? I think 72.2% of all the cases in the US now are BA2. You know, it's just taken over. And what's next? We'll see.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. And, this goes right into our first headline of the day, which is how the next corona variant could emerge. It has emerged with BA2, but what could come next now that we're seeing about 73% of cases with BA2?
Yeah, well, that's the question of the hour. We don't know what's going to come next. We blew it every single wave. I don't know if you remember last summer around July 4th weekend, but in June and July, the cases were also way down. And a lot of people said, hey, there's no more waves. This is the end. It's just going to be this endemic thing. And then in August, it started in September, and we had the Delta wave. And Delta was a nasty one because it was more severe. And then we said, well, okay, well, that started a little early because it's, started in the summer, actually. And we said, oh, well, that'll probably carry us through the winter as we're fighting off Delta. And then Omicron came on top of that. I mean, just incredible. So we don't know. But there is this thing called antigenic drift. And what happens is the virus now is so heavily mutated, it doesn't look anything like how it started, in 2019. And, ultimately, is this thing going to be able to function? So that's really the question of the hour. Is this thing going to just mutate its way into oblivion? Or are we going to get a BA3?
Right.
Nobody knows. This is just, we're on uncharted territory. But, I think now our surveillance mechanisms are good enough that we will pick it up quickly. And if we have to take a step back now and then, okay, we can do it. And because we know what works to slow this thing down. So take your little breather now, do whatever you want to do, try not to get infected, and keep up with your boosters.
Right, absolutely. And, speaking of getting boosters and getting vaccines, our next big COVID headline is that Botswana approves Corbathisix COVID vaccine. What can you tell us about this new COVID vaccine that was developed in Texas?
Yeah, this is the vaccine that was developed in Texas. I think it's a Baylor, Peter Hotez and his team, and it's a relatively easy vaccine to make. It uses an older technology. The storage is easier. There's a lot of good things about it. And in the trials they've done, it worked pretty well. And so this is already being used in India, Bangladesh, and Indonesia, and now Botswana, because they can keep up with manufacturing of this. It's not so it's not as difficult as the mRNA vaccines. So, hey, good for them. And they did a great job with this. Novavax also coming along, also should be approved shortly. Also kind of an older technology with a little kick to it with the adjuvant that they have. But we're gonna have some more options.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. Our third big COVID headline is that the CDC is now reporting that heart issues are more common after COVID infection than vaccinations. What can you tell us about this study that they did?
Well, everyone is really concerned about long COVID. What happens is COVID is, it's affecting people's smell, hearing, their lungs, and the heart, and very nervous about, inflammation of the heart and myocarditis, especially in younger people, where it was kind of first reported. However, it's clear that getting COVID is much worse than anything that the vaccine can do. And that makes a lot of sense, because when you have COVID, you've got like trillions of virus in your body. And, it's just having this, you have this massive immunologic response. And it's, it's all, relatively speaking, compared to the minuscule amount you get in a vaccine, which does trigger the immune response, but not like, like an infection does. So, and what they're saying is that, the infection causes more trouble with the heart than the vaccine. And this is true for all the side effects. So infection is bad. It's very bad for you. And we don't know the long-term consequences, but we'll find out.
Yeah, absolutely. And our last big COVID headline is the WHO is examining potential hearing problems linked to COVID vaccines. What can you tell us about the side effect of getting the vaccine that they're investigating?
Well, WHO recently reported that there were 367 cases of tinnitus, that's ringing in the ear, and 164 cases of hearing loss from, this is like WHO is reporting, so it's from around the world. But now, so you heard the numbers, 367 and 164, there's been 11 billion doses administered. So we're talking a really, really low percentage of hearing loss. Probably COVID is it'll be even worse if you get COVID. And if you don't take the vaccine, you're gonna get COVID. You're gonna probably get COVID anyway, even if you took the vaccine. So you have to put it into perspective. So if you add those two together, that's, just a little over 500 cases out of 11 billion doses.
Yeah.
So it's low, very low, but it's real.
Yeah.
Same thing with myocarditis, but getting COVID even causes more. So pick your poison. Fortunately, it's very rare. And there's lots of other reasons why people have hearing loss and tinnitus.
Yeah, absolutely. And now moving on to our COVID questions. This individual is 66 years old and they had 2 Pfizer vaccinations and 1 Pfizer booster. They are now getting ready for the second booster. Both Pfizer and Moderna are FDA approved. They have heard that it might be beneficial to, quote, mix things up and now get a Moderna booster rather than Pfizer, but it might provide some additional measures of protection. What can you tell us about this mixing and matching with the second booster for some individuals?
Yeah, so there was this is already many months ago. There was a very nice study looking at people who got one vaccine and then their booster was a different vaccine or the same. So they did a nice little scientific study, and there was evidence that mix and matching can actually have a beneficial immunologic response. So I get this question probably 5 times a day. It really, now because these 4th boosters recommended to mix things up. And so like I'm due, after I recover completely from this COVID, I'm going to get my 4th shot, my second booster. So the first 2 are not boosters. Those are just vaccines. And then the 3rd shot, your first booster, and the second shot, which is actually your 4th shot, is they're your second booster. Anyway, I'm just like this person. I had all 3 Pfizer shots. I'm going to take the Moderna for the next one. And that's basically what I recommended. And people that had the Moderna say, take the Pfizer. It's not going to hurt and it may be beneficial. So since it doesn't hurt and you're going to take a vaccine anyway, go with one of those. Now, we don't know about the other vaccines yet. We don't know about Novavax is not approved yet, and this one down in Texas is not approved in the US. So we don't know about them, but we do know about the 3 currently approved ones. We wouldn't want to be given the J&J vaccine because that is associated with more serious effects, particularly in men over 50 and women under 50. So that's kind of out of the picture for most people. They're still available and you can do it. But if you had the J&J, taking one of the mRNA vaccine works very well.
Right. Absolutely. Now for a second COVID question, does it make sense to wait for a 4th booster closer to a June vacation out of the country, given waning effectiveness?
Well, this is all hypothetical. We don't really know how much the effectiveness is going to wane in that period of time. So it's really kind of hard to say. It's up to this person. I mean, because you're very much, it depends where you're going also on vacation, because you may have more risk here than where you're going on vacation, because the virus is everywhere. So it's a half a dozen, one or the other. In this particular case, I would just make sure you take the vaccine, whether you take it today, tomorrow, next month, in May, before you go on this vacation in June. If the place you're going to is a high risk place, which is probably not, because most places are categorized now in low risk. It's a personal decision, and you can talk to your doctor about that. But I really don't think you really are going to gain much benefit by waiting.
Wonderful. Now for a 3rd COVID question. My wife's in osteolaryngitis shared that there have been anecdotal evidence that the COVID vaccinations may contribute to hearing loss. While she's 73 years old, because of her hearing loss, she's reluctant to get a second booster, which in this case would be Moderna. We talked a bit about this before, but what would you recommend to this individual?
Yeah, so this is a real case. The person with hearing loss is very concerned. Remember now, 500 out of 11 billion, that's pretty low. What's your risk for a 73-year-old of getting really sick from COVID? It's high, and the COVID is out there, even if you're vaccinated. So you want to have as much protection as possible, but this is a personal decision that this person has to make with the guidance of their own physician and risk. But I would say they should seriously consider getting the booster, because getting COVID could also cause hearing loss. and also could cause even worse than hearing loss. In a 73-year-old, they could end up in the hospital. They could, even worse. So it's all a trade-off. There's no binary decision. It's just, got to put it all on the table and make a decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And now for our fourth and last COVID question. This individual says, I recently had a cold, runny nose, sinus pressure, headache, and tiredness. I took 2 at-home COVID tests and they both came back negative. I am Moderna vaccinated and boosted. My sister, unvaccinated, thinks I had Omicron because this is what her doctor told her. He told her Omicron doesn't show up on the COVID test, that everyone who has symptoms has it. Is this true, Dr. Murphy?
Well, there's a couple strange things about this question. One is that the symptoms they're having are more like an upper respiratory tract infection, but that can definitely be COVID. So you can't rule out COVID in this case based on the symptoms. And she had 2 at-home tests, which are lateral flow assays, which are good, especially if you do more than one. So she's done 2, that's great. But it's still not as good as a PCR. So if they're still symptomatic, they should go get a PCR test, molecular test. It is a better test. Now, all these symptoms here can be something else. We had the highest number of flu cases last week at my hospital that we've seen since the flu season started. So this could be a number of different things. And there's other viruses that cause these type of symptoms. So they could be something else. And so, but what they're saying here is just not true. You can't tell that this was COVID unless you have actually a laboratory confirmation, because the symptoms mix with too many other different things. And so they need a firm diagnosis to get it. And everyone that has those symptoms does not have COVID. So, I mean, that's the take home point. So you got to make the diagnosis, and you can do that in a variety of different ways, but based on symptoms, it doesn't work.
Well, that's good to know. Well, Dr. Murphy, those were all of our COVID questions for today. Thank you very, very much.
Okay, thank you. Have a great day.